Scott just made the point.
Thomas Jefferson
Used to be a lot more secure, not just. Obamacare might be the settled law of the land, as our Democratic friends like to say, but it's turned into an unsettling opportunity for fraud in the GOP-controlled Congress, which is behind the scenes claiming to be, get this, a small business to avoid obeying the law. I'm Steve Green. This is Trifecta. And with me today, of course, Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. Gentlemen, would it shock you to learn that Congress is not living up to its legally binding promise to live under the same law of the land as the rest of us? No? Wouldn't shock you. Well, American Commitment's Phil Kerpen spoke to Newsmax the other day to talk about the fraud. This is fraud that Congress and its Democrats and Republicans alike are committing in defiance of the law we're told is working so very well for everybody. Here's what he had to say. They filed false documents to get around the requirement in the Obamacare law that they lose their previous insurance coverage and go into the exchanges like everyone else. That was something the American people had demanded. When it actually came time for it to happen, members of Congress of both parties didn't want to do it. They didn't want to lose taxpayer funding for their premiums for themselves and their staff. Scott, usually play devil's advocate on this show, so let me turn this one around on you instead. This Congress didn't vote for Obamacare, and their staffers presumably aren't supporters of it either, being majority GOP. And we just did a segment a few weeks ago on how ordinary Americans should start ignoring stupid regulations and getting on with their lives and getting on with their businesses. So how can anyone claim that it's somehow wrong for Congress to protect themselves and their underpaid staffers from a law they never voted for?
Well, Steve, I had a different opinion about this yesterday, but today I've been talking with my attorney, and I've managed to incorporate Trifecta, the three of us, into a company that also fits under that qualification. And so really I have no problem with Congress at this point in doing whatever they need to do to beat this terrible law. Yeah, that's the irony of this, is like, here these people are, the lawmakers, the legislators, the people who allegedly have to live under the law of the land. If you don't like it, repeal it. And if you can't repeal it, the last thing in the world you want to do is to be seen trying to skirt it. And that is just a despicable thing that I hope everybody finds. I don't care which party is involved in this. I want the whole country to know about this. And the president should have to answer for this, too. You know, why is it that your own party is trying to beat to a path around the requirements of your law?
Well, we know what's in it, just not Congress. Now, in case this actual fraud wasn't cut and dried enough, here's more from Kerpen, so you can really get into the nitty-gritty of how they did this. He said, what they did is they lied. They filed false documents, one claiming the U.S. House of Representatives has less than 50 employees, another claiming the U.S. Senate has less than 50 employees, and they went into the Small Business Exchange pretending to be small businesses, and of those, less than 100 employees of Congress in the Small Business Exchange. Over 13,000 people have signed up. This is an obvious and ongoing fraud, Kerpen concluded. Bill, maybe the only win Republicans got when the Democrats were writing Obamacare behind closed doors was a provision that Congress would not be exempted. That unlike Social Security, unlike Medicaid, all these other Democratic programs, Congress for once would have to obey the same law as everybody else. And now we get this. So my question to you is a simple one. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, Oscar.
Well, first of all, Congress is a small business. It's one of those small businesses like the mom and pop, grocery store, the dry cleaning store that does about, I don't know, $4 trillion in sales every year. Just another little corner small business, just like the rest of you out there struggling to survive. Plus, it has the ability to take money from you by gunpoint. It's that kind of small business. My simple response to this would be, how many people can you fit into a paddy wagon, or do they all go individually in 535 squad cars, one at a time, perp walk out of Congress with their hands over their faces? Every single one of them should be in jail. This is the age of lawlessness. And to say that Obama is responsible for it is to get it exactly backward. He and the rest of his progressive types simply capitalize the most on it. They're the most lawless of the lawless group. But if there was an actual honest to God opposition in Washington, then he wouldn't be able to get away with any of this stuff. The fact that the Republicans ran on making this apply to all members of Congress, and for them to simply not just to agree to go on to it, but be part of this ongoing criminal fraud against the American people, shows you that we don't deserve to win elections, and we won't as long as this continues. I think they all need to be in jail, every single one of them. I think the president needs to be in jail. I think the entire damn city should go to jail, and I think they should go to jail for a long time. In fact, I think they ought to take the entire population of D.C. Let's not take any chances. Just ship them out someplace and let them back in on a case-by-case basis. I would RICO the entire federal government, frankly, all of it. I'd RICO the whole thing. And I would just say, well, let's look down, and rather than trying to prove guilt, let's just see who maybe is innocent in this goat rodeo. I'm not joking about this. Honestly, they all need to go to jail, every single one of them. We would have to.
You've given me a great idea. Instead of going through all this RICO hassle, and it is a hassle even when you got the FBI on your side, let's just build a wall around Washington, D.C., escape from New York style, and when the food runs out, the cannibalism begins. Oh, who am I kidding? The cannibalism began about 50, 60 years ago.
They'd start
I'm
earmarking.
going to disagree.
They would just start earmarking each other, Steve. If it came down to cannibalism, I'm telling you, backroom deals would be made, and we'd sacrifice, Johnson from North Carolina, all in favor of Johnson from North Carolina. Read Cannibalism in the Cars by Mark Twain, get an idea how politicians would handle actual cannibalism. Sorry.
The esteemed gentleman from South Carolina is quite tender. All right, folks, I'm going to disagree with my esteemed co-host today. While what Congress has done here might not be strictly legal, it certainly isn't fraud. The U.S. Congress, this is an organization with 535 directors with a staff of thousands overseeing various offices with thousands more employees. They operate all of this on a shoestring budget of $5 or $6 billion. We're overseeing annual spending of roughly $3.9 trillion. That's a 3 followed by a 9 followed by 11 zeros. When Congress doesn't collect enough money from their customers, that's you and me, to cover all of those expenses, and they almost never do, they simply create however many hundreds of billions of dollars they need out of thin air as debt to be repaid by our children and our grandchildren, just like any small business. So when you take those hundreds of directors and those thousands of employees deciding the fate of billions in operating expenses and hundreds of billions of debt and trillions in spending each and every year, there's no fraud in claiming to be a small business, just like your corner sandwich shop or local contractor. It's not fraud, because there's no word in the English language big enough to describe the enormity of the offense this Congress is committing against the people of these United States. For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green.